What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back here to another live stream. I wanted to come on a little bit early here to get ready for our guest here this morning. We're going to have Eleanor joining us to talk all things XRP, all things Ripple here at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. So just wanted to kind of come on here, set the stage, get everybody in the room. So appreciate you guys so much for popping in here. And yeah, so we're going to have a lot to get into with XRP, and Eleanor has been just right at the forefront of pretty much all of the latest news and breaking information over the past several weeks and months, really. Eleanor at Fox Business does a fantastic job of reporting on crypto. She's done some great work surrounding the FTX debacle, also more recently around Ripple's case versus the SEC. So can't wait to have that discussion with her coming up at the top of the hour. Glad you guys can join us. And again, we're about 15 minutes away, 17 minutes away. And we're going to dive into that conversation for sure. But just to quickly set the stage a little bit, talking about the overall market here, not too much going on right now. Bitcoin pretty flat. I just read something like Bitcoin is up 0.66% in the last month. I mean, talk about like literally no volatility right now in the markets. It's really weird. Volume is down. There's no volatility. I saw a joke. It was basically like, is Bitcoin like a stable coin now? It feels like that. It really does. But we know that that won't last. Volatility will come back into crypto. It always does, right? So that won't last forever. And eventually we're going to have some movement, some definite movement up or down. I think we're gearing up for some type of breakout or breakdown, right? But really, really flat across the board right now. Nothing really brewing. As for XRP, because that's going to be the topic of discussion today. As for XRP, we're sitting at about 63 cents right now. Look at the volume in the last 24 hours, though. Down 40%. That's crazy. Now, it has spiked at various times. Still, just under $1 billion of volume. That's ranked number 7. It's a little bit lower than their number 5 ranking by market cap right now. We did spike up to about 64 cents here in the last 24 hours. In the last 7 days, we popped up to about 66 cents 2 or 3 different times here in the last week, but nothing too much to talk about when it comes to price. Bitcoin dominance has been the story all year of 2023, and it continues to be the story. Altcoins have not really seen a significant rally. Now, XRP did, of course. When you look at the 1 year, of course, that was the big news event right there back on July 12th and the 13th. We had the huge price increase where literally within hours went from 47 cents all the way up to 90-some cents. So that was pretty crazy. But we've got a lot to talk about with Eleanor here at the top of the hour, about 15 minutes away. Ripple joins Bank for International Settlements, BIS for Payments Task Force. Can XRP benefit from this? I covered this in a video a little bit. We'll be talking about this and just talking about some of the updates as it relates to the lawsuit. So that should be a lot of fun here at the top of the hour. You know, if you're new to XRP, I figured I'd pull some of this up, some of the things that Ripple XRP provides, some of the big benefits over traditional blockchain networks like Bitcoin. Fast transaction speed, right? That's one of the big ones. Bitcoin's network, relatively slow to a lot of the other altcoins out there. It's a major drawback for some users. XRP transactions, lightning fast, with the ledger completing transactions in 3 to 5 seconds. The speed significantly outperforms Bitcoin, which can sometimes take up to 20 minutes, which is pretty crazy. Who we got in the house here? Noel, what's up, man? Thank you all so much for tuning in. I know we weren't supposed to go live until 10, but just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit, bring everybody in here. And if you guys would, who's in here, go ahead and hit that like button for us. Subscribe to the channel. I'm expecting we're going to get some new people here. I do talk about crypto every single day on the channel. Talk about XRP every single day as well. So if you want some new insights, some different voices, would appreciate you guys subscribing down below. And hitting that like button for us definitely helps us out. So in addition to the transaction speeds, just the economical cost of transactions The Ripple blockchain uses drops to account for transactions, making XRP trading highly economical compared to other blockchains. How about scalability? You know, we always talk about scalability, security, and speed when we talk about blockchains. Scalability, this blockchain Ripple can handle up to 1,500 transactions per second, nearly matching the capacity of payment processors like Visa, MasterCard, etc., which manages right around 1,700 transactions per second. This is why Ripple is ideal for fintech companies requiring an infrastructure capable of handling high transaction volumes, needing that high throughput, high uptime, and low power consumption as well. Ripple's distributed ledger platform, benefiting from a global network of 150 validators on RippleNet. Also speaking to the scalability here, no computing resources are needed to mine XRP. The network consumes less power than conventional blockchains like Bitcoin as well. So just a little bit of background there, but in terms of some of the things, you know, we want to hit on here today, we are going to talk about the banking industry, the potential there for Ripple. We're also going to talk more about XRP getting listed on Gemini. That was some recent news that just came out yesterday. And the fact that it briefly skyrocketed to $50, which was nuts. And then, of course, the United States seeking to appeal Ripple Labs' crypto decision. Kind of get into the weeds here a little bit. There was a lot talked about this over the past few days when this news came out. So we'll get into all these questions here at the top of the hour. About 11 minutes away. Eleanor will be joining us. If you guys could hit that like button for us, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Vito, what's up, man? Much love, brother. Appreciate all you do. What's up, Vito? Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for popping in here, hanging out with us on a Friday morning. But yeah, man, this market has just been so boring for crypto, right? Just so boring, and nothing's really brewing. And we've got some cryptos like SHIB, you know, up 16% in the last 7 days. That's on the heels of them launching their L2 Shibarium. Toncoin, for whatever reason's up 6%. OKB, I don't know why that's up 7%, but I mean, just hardly nothing going on. Algorand, slightly here in the last week, but nearly everything just flat. And it's been that way for weeks, which is just unlike crypto. But we are seeing some really low volume numbers. Volume right now in the last 24 hours down 19% again. $23.78 billion of volume. This will change. You know, one thing I will say, the summers in crypto tend to be cooling off periods. They tend to be very quiet. I call them the dog days of summer. We saw it in 2021. Last year, we saw it as well. Last year was kind of an outlier because we had such a hangover after the FTX debacle. And it was I think the peak of the bear market, right? So 2022 was just brutal across the board. But here again this year, we saw a great resurgence to start the year. Interestingly enough, we set our lows in December of last year. So our year-over-year gains are really good. You know, Bitcoin was at 15,500, 16,000, something like that, to start the year. So our year-over-year gains are great, even with some altcoins. But what we've seen is a big shift for Bitcoin gaining dominance this year. And a lot of that has been the FUD that has surrounded altcoins, from the SEC coming down and their lawsuits against Coinbase and Binance and the ongoing Ripple lawsuit. But the Ripple victory, or partial victory, we're going to talk to Eleanor about that too. What is this? Is it a full-on win? I know everybody has differing opinions on that. It has kind of sparked some interest again in altcoins, but we haven't seen an altcoin rally by any means, right? We haven't seen a ton of money come back into altcoins. We haven't seen a lot of new money come into crypto this year. And it's been a little while. A lot of the money that we're seeing is being transferred around the market. So it's money that's already in the market being shuffled around, right? A lot of that money's been shuffled back into Bitcoin. People think it's more of a safe haven asset, right? than some other things right now, especially with all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But eventually that will shift. Eventually we're going to have an altcoin season again. Eventually things are going to break loose for Ethereum, for XRP, for Cardano, for Solana, Polygon, and the list goes on. It's just, we're going through some growing pains right now, I think, in the overall markets, and we don't have a lot of new money. That's our biggest thing that we're waiting for right now. We don't have a lot of new money coming into crypto. But a lot of people think with the Bitcoin halving coming next year that, we should start gearing up. I'll tell you this too. I'm excited to get past the summer because the summer is usually just very, very slow in crypto. It's funny because before I was ever in crypto, I loved the summer, right? It's like, who doesn't like the summer? But in crypto, summers are not very fun. Not a lot of people are investing. Not a lot of people are interested. I think there's certainly something to that. You get more people inside than, in the winter times, and they're looking maybe some New Year's resolutions. I'm going to invest more this year. Right. And we've seen just the markets perform a lot better in the beginning and later parts of the year. So Q4, I think, is going to be a breath of fresh air for crypto. And I do think we could start to see some altcoins start moving. There's an article out there talking about this Bitcoin ETF stuff too, and I want to get into this later as well. There's some interesting stuff related to this Bitcoin ETF. I know I have the article up here. Let me see where the heck it is. It's on one of these dang tabs here. We're going to talk about the price of XRP too. We'll talk to Eleanor about that. Get some insights. I know everybody wants price predictions. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? We're all speculating. Of course, it's not financial advice. If I knew where XRP was going to go and when, well, I would be I would be in a good shape, right? But this is the article I was looking for. So, leak reveals BlackRock's game-changing Bitcoin plan that could cause price chaos for Ethereum, XRP, and crypto, and price chaos in a good way. And essentially what this means is once the Bitcoin spot ETF is accepted through BlackRock, not only does it open up the door for everybody else's ETF, but it opens the door for institutional money to come into crypto. And there could be a spillover effect into some of the other top altcoins outside of Bitcoin. And when you look at the top altcoins, none bigger than Ethereum and XRP, right? So recently, Larry Fink of BlackRock basically changed his tune on Bitcoin. And that was a big, big deal. Now, Mike Novogratz came in from Galaxy Digital and talked about that a little bit in this article. I thought it was really interesting. And Mike Novogratz, chief executive of crypto financial services company Galaxy Digital, has revealed his sources at two of the world's largest asset managers, BlackRock included in there, that they are expecting a game-changing spot Bitcoin ETF to be approved within the next 6 months. Calling it a matter of when, not if. This obviously is huge. Once this happens, it opens the floodgates for crypto. And going on here, it says Novogratz, citing his contacts at the two asset managers, that between them look after around 10 trillion of value, a lot of that with BlackRock. It's not a question of if, but when the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, SEC, will approve at least one of a handful of ETF applications. And it's my understanding, I think if BlackRock gets approved, which I think they'll be the first to get approved, it opens the floodgates for everybody to get approved, right? On a slow case-by-case basis. Novogratz says it's a big, big deal. This was during Galaxy's second quarter earnings call. He says it's a big deal because both our contacts from the Invesco side and from the BlackRock side get you to think that this is a question of when, not if. And so you're kind of in your 4 to 6 months if you had to put a pin the tail on the donkey audit. Interesting. Novogratz added he sees signs of increased institutional investor participation in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. So he thinks there'll be a spillover effect into some of the other top altcoins. I'm going to highlight this because I want to come back to this later. Institutions have come back, some in the immediate term, They've come back in futures. They've come back in some of these stocks, he says. But importantly, they're coming back in structural ways, Novogratz said, revealing a second quarter net loss for Galaxy. Last month, BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF application spurred a flurry of rival bids when it revealed it had filed a request for the SEC to launch an investment vehicle that would allow institutional and individual traders to gain exposure to Bitcoin without directly buying and selling the asset through cryptocurrency exchanges. But of course, now we have the new exchange coming too. It's going to be offering Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash to start. Who knows? Maybe XRP will be added to that list sooner rather than later as well. But I think what Novogratz is saying here is big. You know, you've got a bunch of other people on the sidelines like Kathy Wood at ARK Invest waiting too. They're first in line behind BlackRock. The SEC's actions related to Bitcoin ETFs should be done in a fair and orderly manner. This is coming from Grayscale's chief legal officer. So you got a lot of people waiting in line here to get in, and a lot of institutional money also waiting until, you know, the red light switches to green light, and then they can go, right? And I think there will be a spillover into some of these top altcoins. Why not? Because once people get keen on what's going on and they take a look at XRP and they take a look at Ethereum, they're going to see that there might be more opportunity for gains there than Bitcoin. Not only that, but both Ethereum and XRP offer something completely unique and different than Bitcoin. So let's see who we got in chat. Let's see. Ola from Spain, Costa Blanca. Thanks for your time. Ahmed, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for popping in. Guys, if you haven't hit the like button, we're almost to 100 people live with us. We should slowly but surely get more and more people as people are waking up on the West Coast. I know these earlier live streams don't do as well, but we should have some people with us. Last time we did an XRP stream, that was nuts. We had a ton of people, thousands of people with us. That was, of course, the day that Ripple won the lawsuit, at least partial victory, whichever you prefer. Jay Crypto, what's up, man? Paul's in the house. Nice. Good morning. Saban, how we doing? What really bugs my mind, even if XRP hits $3 to $5, this is still an opportunity in the long run, Flint says. Yeah, for sure. I think so too, man. I think the when you consider the all-time high for XRP is a little bit over $3, I think there's certainly more upside there for sure. I agree 100%. We're going to get into some of that alpha. And by the way, guys, there is going to be, guys and gals out there, opportunities for you to ask questions. So as soon as we get rolling here, once Eleanor joins us, we're going to talk about some of the latest news with XRP. Crypto Vegans in the house. What's up? Thanks for this. No problem. Yeah, if you're just joining us, Eleanor is going to be joining us here in just a moment. Eleanor is going to be joining us here on the stream in just a moment, so we'll have her with us here. What do we got? Wen Lampo, nice. All right, we have Eleanor in the backstage. Let's bring her in. How we doing?
Hi. Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sound great.
Awesome. How are you?
So doing fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us here. I know so many people have been following your tweets and everything. Doing a fantastic job. Got to tell you that too. And I've been following closely. So many things happening with XRP. So how's everything with you? It's got to be busy, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's busy, but I love being busy because if not, I'm bored. So it's been an interesting industry to cover in the last 2 years, as I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, 100%. So let's start there. Just kind of your journey in covering crypto. So how did it all start for you?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it by accident. It was when I first started working with Charlie Gasparino, who's my boss here at Fox Business. He's the senior business correspondent, and we cover a wide range of things. But crypto was, getting bigger, I guess, in 2021, right? We had the bull market, and it was right before the collapse of Terra and everything with FTX. So everything was pretty positive in the industry at that point. And someone brought to our attention, and I say someone because I'm sure a lot of people watching are in the XRP community. John Deaton actually brought the Ripple case to Charlie's attention and said, this is a crazy case. It was brought in December of 2020. The SEC is going after Ripple for selling unregistered securities, but there's all these conflicts of interest and sort of backroom things that are going on here with the key players who are involved. And it's an interesting story, and you guys should dig into it and see what you can find. So we did just that, and we wrote a 10,000 word opus, is what we called it, and just kind of dug into all the connections, the players involved, Clayton, Hinman, everything going on at the SEC in terms of how they were trying to establish rules of the road, trying to figure out what crypto was exactly, and how Ripple was dragged into this lawsuit, sort of for reasons that were, sort of unknown at the time. Kind of, they were selling unregistered securities, but there was no really definition for, what a crypto is. Is it a security? Is it a commodity? And we're still having that argument today, right? So, diving into all that in 2021 was super fascinating. And then kind of from there, just following the industry, I got a real bug for it. I took a blockchain course through Oxford University just to kind of get more savvy on the technical side of things. I'm still not super good with all the tech stuff. So I do thrive sort of with the regulatory side of things. I think it's very interesting. And it is really the big part of the conversation right now. And it's going to be ongoing, I feel, with everything going on in Congress right now, trying to write laws. And, the SEC is still not backing down with their regulation by enforcement approach. So it's just been such an interesting space. And there's always news. There's always something to talk about. And so specifically at Fox Business, we've sort of brought the crypto coverage here, Charlie and I, because it wasn't really being covered that much here before. And, I was really happy that I kind of found my niche with this crypto stuff. And I was able to bring it sort of to Fox Business and put a spotlight on the industry, and specifically the Ripple case, because it's such an important piece of the puzzle, for how crypto is going to be classified going forward. So that's kind of my story, just, kind of by accident fell into it, but I'm loving it. It's a great industry, and I'm looking forward to everything that's going to come. I mean, it's going to be a crazy year getting into the election, because you've got crypto as probably one of the biggest, not one of the biggest, like in terms of, all the usual election issues, but, you've got people who are really invested in this industry, and you've got candidates coming out saying, I'm supporting Bitcoin and I'm against a CBDC. So, there's that conversation. It's starting to get into the conversation. And I think, that's going to be something really interesting to watch as we head into the election next year.
In hearing you, that was great, by the way. And in hearing you talk about all of those sort of things, what really dawned on me is like crypto's becoming legitimate and legitimized. I mean, by people like yourself and mainstream media talking about crypto. For so long, it was so underground. It was like, oh yeah, that little asset class over there. Okay, that's cute, right? That's cool, but we can just ignore that, and you can't ignore it anymore. And I think that's a big thing, and the Ripple lawsuit has highlighted that, the whole FTX. A lot of it has been negative news, but I guess the silver lining in that is it gets picked up, it gets covered, and we start to learn about, the good, the bad, the ugly side of the industry. It's certainly still new as well. And you're right, too, like with the conversation shifting, with political candidates talking about it, senators talking about it, it's really becoming a big part of this next election cycle. But coming back to this Ripple case, what are some of the most interesting things that you've found in your reporting? I mean, just if you could kind of, 2 or 3 of them or something that's really been especially interesting for you to kind of find out and dive deeper into.
Well, I would say we started off kind of digging into the behind the scenes of everything that went into bringing the case, right? So the way that it was brought, Jay Clayton, the former chairman of the SEC, brought the case literally on his last day in office, and then kind of said, I'm walking out the door, and Gary Gensler comes in, and now it's his case all of a sudden. So, that's not really typical to do. If and I guess Ripple at the time wasn't really like this big company, right? Like it was a small kind of crypto player. I would say small, but like relatively not really known in the wider world, I suppose. So, but I don't think he realized like what he did there and what how big the case would have, implications the case would have on the wider industry. Just digging into the players, I guess, a little bit, like, there's obviously been these emails, the Hinman emails that we were able to see a couple of weeks ago. We saw Empower Oversight, who is it's a watchdog organization who basically has been petitioning the SEC for FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, saying we want to secure the communications between Hinman and his former firm, Simpson and Thatcher. And I think digging into those sort of conflicts of interest, and that's kind of how we really started, was probably very eye-opening for me, I would say. I always refer back to the Joseph Grunfest letter as well. I think my very first interview about the Ripple case, they asked me, what was the most interesting thing that you sort of found out, that you dug into looking at this whole lawsuit? And it was really that there was such a divide between people at the SEC and outside experts about what really constituted a security, right? People inside the SEC were telling Bill Hinman, don't put Ether in your speech, in that famous June 2018 speech that basically gave a free pass to Bitcoin and Ethereum to operate not as securities, right? So they weren't under SEC oversight. But there was such a rift there. And from what we've seen from the Hinman emails and everything that Empower Oversight has been able to uncover through FOIA, Hinman kind of really just went on his own path. He sort of ignored recommendations from like the head of trading and markets, other colleagues in the SEC that really, were saying, this is our opinion, and I really think that you should, not include Ether in this speech. It's going to, down the line, it's going to affect our ability to, potentially revisit it in the future. I think just like seeing from that, as someone who's never really covered like law or anything before, and like the inner workings of a government agency like the SEC, just seeing that indecisiveness and really kind of like people just winging it, frankly, well, we don't know what this is, and like hopefully like some outside experts can give us some insight, and policy is made on these decisions, and the decisions to bring big lawsuits are made on these decisions. So digging into those things was certainly eye-opening. These conflicts of interest that we all know are there, right? It's the government. It's not really surprising that there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't really know about. But yeah, I think just the whole sort of the way it came together was very interesting. And then just going through 2 years of legal battle, right? Like in court, we're watching the SEC come in and say, oh, this was not meant to be market guidance, and this was just some random speech that our head of CorpFin decided to make just because he felt like it. And then the judge kind of saying, all right, well, that's fine. And then 2 months later, 3 months later, them reversing it and saying, actually, it was meant to be market guidance, and and just the extent that they went to try and hide those Hinman documents, I think was super interesting as well. So there's so many rabbit holes to go down, but I think everything that's come out of this case is got such crazy and major implications for the industry as a whole. And I always forget how most people don't know like the backstory of the whole, like why the case was brought and who the key players were. Most people now are just saying it's Ripple, and this obviously the outcome of the judge's decision will have a big effect on the industry. But I always forget that people haven't really dug into like the Hinman side of it as much as some people like Charlie and I have, and obviously the XRP community. So that's been super, super eye-opening for me.
How has it been just kind of joining the XRP community? Maybe I guess by accident a little bit, but I'm sure it's gotten pretty crazy with just how many people are interested in it, just the community but behind XRP.
Yeah, it's a massive community. I mean, you've got communities behind every crypto coin technically, right? You've got the Bitcoin maxis, you've got the Ether maxis, and then you've got the XRP community. But the level of passion behind this group of people is quite staggering, and I think you've seen that. Obviously, you've seen crypto Twitter and how just in sheer droves they come out, and the research they do, and they dig up stuff from years past, videos, transcripts, things that these government officials were saying that probably the government officials themselves don't even remember saying. Mm-hmm. And it's helped weave kind of the story together of like what these people were thinking at the time, and how their decisions changed, and the impact that that's had. And I think it goes a long way in highlighting this new sort of form of citizen journalism, which I've talked about quite a lot in the last couple months or so, as Twitter's been on the rise. Everybody's on Twitter these days, and everybody's doing their own research, and everybody's kind of contributing to the conversation. And I think Spaces has gone a long way of helping people do that. And you kind of just not leaving it to the mainstream media anymore, right? You've got people actually like contributing to the conversation, and I think that's been really important. And the XRP community has been a pillar of that, right? They've really made their voices heard. And then obviously getting in on the case with John Deaton, 75,000 XRP holders were, the amici. He represented them as amici in court. So, they had their voices heard. And I think that really is pretty monumental. I don't know other cases that have had that many people sign on to say, we are passionate about this and we believe this, and we really think, the SEC is in the wrong here. So that's been really interesting, just that sort of shift from mainstream to people contributing to the conversation, everyday people.
Yeah. How would you kind of characterize or explain Ripple's victory or partial victory? Or I guess I want your insight in what is this, because there's been a lot of controversy in terms of, okay, is it over? Have they won? Or what's still going on? And I know you had some recent tweets about that, what's still coming in Q2 of next year. So could you kind of speak to that in terms of, from a legal side, as much as you've learned, like, where are we with all of that? Is it over? Is it done? Where are we?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's anywhere close to being done. And either way you look at it, it's going to be dragging out for another couple of years. And I say that because even if the SEC didn't appeal, or they haven't officially appealed yet, I'll get into it now. So the letter that they filed on Wednesday was basically their letter of intent to Judge Torres, saying we plan on appealing this in interlocutory appeal, which basically means, this is a great explanation from Jeremy Hogan. Interlocutory comes from the word interrupt, I guess, in like Latin. So it's basically an interrupting appeal, right? We're going to halt the whole case. We're going to halt the trial, and we want you to turn your attention to this right now. So even if they didn't do that, right, the pretrial schedule that came out on Tuesday has scheduled the trial to be in the second quarter of 2024. So, already we're dragging out into next year. It's an election year. There's going to be probably delays. And obviously we saw the SEC come in with this letter and say, we intend to appeal. Now, the great thing I learned about law, probably the thing that stuck out most in my mind, is that, these processes really aren't quick. Like you can file something and then the opposing party has 10 days or 30 days to respond to it, right? So we're already pushing that time down the line. You've got time to respond. So Ripple itself now has 10 days from Wednesday to respond to the SEC's request to appeal. And then the judge will take into consideration both, and then she'll make a decision. But there's a lot of factors that go into this, right? So she's got to approve it, and then the Second Circuit Court of Appeals has also got to approve it. And there's a lot of questions as to whether, will the judge who spent so much time coming up with this decision agree to appeal her own decision, right? And there's some thought out there that, maybe she's so confident in her decision that she'll say, okay, like I'll grant this appeal, or I'll at least, grant you permission to go ask the Second Circuit whether, you can appeal it. I think there's a lot of question like, is that bad if she does grant it? And I don't think it is bad. I think, she's obviously confident in her decision. So, will it stand up in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals? We'll have to see. But it's definitely not over. And even if they didn't do this appeal, then they would probably have appealed it, after the trial. Just that's when they would officially be allowed to do a regular appeal. So it's another couple of years, I would say. But the good thing in the meantime is that, we've got this decision from Torres that says cryptos that are sold on through exchanges to second parties, secondary market sales are not securities. The tokens themselves are not securities. We really have to look at the underlying transaction and how it's sold to really determine whether the Howey test applies there. And, whether the SEC gets the interlocutory appeal, whether they have to wait until the trial is over, that stands. Her decision stands for this particular token in this particular case. So, for now, it's standing, and I think that's a good thing.
Do you think the Howey test still works with digital assets? Do you think we need something different? Do you think it should be adjusted? Do you think does it still apply? I mean, when was it applied? 1946, I think.
Right. I think in certain situations, definitely, I think it still applies. I think does there need to be some special considerations when it comes to digital assets? I think so. I don't see them reversing, almost 100-year-old securities laws just because of the way the SEC is, operated on those laws for so long. It would take a lot of work and a lot of court, interference to have to change that law. So people say like, oh, it should be a Ripple test. I guess, there's parts of the Howey test that could definitely apply to digital assets. And if you can look at the Rakoff case, right? So the Terraform Labs case, where Rakoff kind of came in and said, actually, in some situations, I believe that tokens sold through exchanges could actually be securities. And, that he said that because Terraform or Terra Luna is it's a totally different case than the Ripple case, right? Like those tokens were a mass marketing campaign. Basically, they put out a notice to their buyers and said everything, all the proceeds that we sell to you, all the proceeds are going to go back into the platform. So automatically that satisfies that prong of the Howey test, where it's like you're relying on the company to turn a profit, and that like the proceeds are going to go back into the company. So you're kind of establishing that investment contract, right? But I think, they definitely. I think we'll see that with Congress as well when they finally finalize and hopefully pass their crypto market structure bill. Then I think that'll go a long way to helping kind of establish this sort of new framework, but also still having the Howey test in there, for some special cases.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody out there. If you guys haven't hit the like button, definitely do that. It really helps us out. And, lets Eleanor know that you appreciate her content. Make sure you guys are following her over on Twitter as well. I've got her tweet pulled up here. So make sure you guys are following Eleanor over on Twitter. So here's another thing. So you mentioned, this got me thinking, you mentioned this lawsuit's far from over. Do you think this entire case holds up the entire altcoin market? Here's what I mean. We all want clarity on regulation in crypto, right? We all want to know just what's what, and let's move forward, and let's get this thing going, right? And let's bring people in, and institutional money, and people feel comfortable, because for so long the narrative has been negative. It's been, from the outside looking in, if you don't really jump into it, it's all a scam, and it's all a Ponzi scheme. Do you think this holds up the timeline in terms of when we could get there, in terms of when we can actually have a path forward for everything that's not Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think so. I think it really establishes that sort of baseline that everybody was asking for, that first step towards clarity, where this judge, she is a district judge. It's not, obviously it's not set in Supreme Court law, but you've got this precedent now where it says, the tokens themselves are not securities, and it all depends on those transactions. And let's face it, I mean, I think a lot of tokens could be securities depending on how they're sold. Like you look at kind of like those altcoins, right, that are the meme coins, I guess I'm trying to say. And like, that could be, that's definitely a case for, like I said before, like bringing in the Howey test, like how does that apply? But I think definitely you're right in saying that this is sort of the first step, and it does sort of kind of hold the entire market up to the standard where it's like, okay, how are these tokens sold? We're not sort of blindly guessing in the dark anymore. We're not saying, okay, like companies that actually come in and say, all right, well, we've got some kind of starting point here. We're not just like operating blindly. And I think definitely it's a great start, and it's going to be really interesting to see just how Congress hashes that out. Obviously this bill now has to go to the House floor, where there could be more amendments changed. That goes to the Senate. So that bill that we're looking at is definitely not, in its final form. There's going to be definitely more changes there. So kind of how they work that in, and how the crypto market responds to it is going to be very interesting.
Definitely going to have ripple effects on the entire industry, whatever comes out of this. So the other thing, I always say that, you got to have the pun, right? Here's the other thing. So what you mentioned, the SEC versus the CFTC. So like, obviously they want different things. It feels as if, and I want your opinion on this, it feels as if both of those governing bodies look at Bitcoin as a commodity, where the holdup is everything else, right? Like with Ethereum, I feel like the SEC still looks at that as a security. So how do we get past that? I mean, are they going to go like one by one to every altcoin once this sort of thing comes out? Because I mean, there's so many freaking tokens, there's so many coins. Like how do we get there? Like how's this going to play out? I know we're speculating, but like I always think about this. Like I have no idea how this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with that bill, right, is that they they encourage, people to come in and obviously there's a path forward now, whether you classify, if you have tokens that classify as digital commodities or restricted digital assets, which would be, assets that are technically securities. There's classifications now, and I think that makes it a lot easier to be able to kind of distinguish what tokens are which. And obviously, there is the consensus that Bitcoin for both the SEC and the CFTC is a commodity. And I think we would all agree with that, right? I mean, if you think about it from the SEC's perspective, Gary's always talking about there's this third party promoter, there's, like people are relying on this person for expectation of profit. Like that's clearly not the case with Bitcoin. Like that is clearly decentralized. And I think a big part of this bill is that it's the decentralization test, right? They take that test and they say, okay, who's behind it and are they profiting from this? And I think you can apply those situations, you can apply those tests to, all the specific coins. I think it will have to be by a case by case basis. And they encourage your people to come in and actually, put their face forward. Like there's a lot of kind of anonymity is probably like one of the biggest parts of crypto, right? Like you can have a pseudonym, you can like, most people in the industry have like avatars as their Twitter profile pictures. So it's like, you can kind of, you can offer a token and not necessarily have to be so transparent and forthcoming about who you are and the situation surrounding it. And I think the laws, when they are finally set in stone, will make sure that that's not really a thing anymore, that like you have to, a face to a name, and this is what I'm investing in, and here's, what you can get from it. Disclosure will be a big part of it. So, I mean, it'll be a big process. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or it's going to, not necessarily take a long time. I think it will. But yeah, I think there will have to be sort of a case by case basis on how these things are classified and eventually traded and offered.
Definitely. And we're getting some good questions from the chat too. At this time, feel free to just drop your questions in there if y'all want some answers here from Eleanor while we have her. So this is a good one. Ask about spot ETFs and the impact overall if approved. I was actually just talking about this Forbes article that came out not too long ago, I think yesterday. Leak reveals BlackRock's game-changing Bitcoin plan that could cause price chaos for Ethereum, XRP, and crypto. And really the crux of this was, if BlackRock's ETF for Bitcoin gets approved, there could be this spillover effect into these major altcoins like Ethereum and XRP, institutional adoption. What do you think about that?
What, because it would be like a competitive, like against those altcoins? Is that the point of the article?
Basically, like once a Bitcoin ETF it gets approved, it kind of opens the door for institutional money to start looking at what else is out there, and they may kind of go toward the Ethereum and XRP. In their mind, from an investor standpoint, they might be thinking, okay, we've figured out Bitcoin a little bit, but what's this Ethereum? What's this XRP? There might be more room for gains here because we're catching it a little bit earlier on. Yeah, absolutely. I think once, and I'm saying once because it will get approved at some point, a spot Bitcoin ETF. Oh, definitely. Especially with these big institutional players. What did you say? Does BlackRock get it first, do you think?
I think there's a good chance. I mean, BlackRock are who they are. They've made the name for themselves because they are the number one asset manager in the world. And they, I think they've got a good chance of being the first one. Whether that's correct or not to, single out BlackRock because of like they're such a big institutional name, as opposed to like the Grayscales of the world who have been fighting. BlackRock just came to the party, right? Like Grayscale has been in there for years trying to establish a spot Bitcoin ETF, and to give it to BlackRock just because they are who they are, I don't know if that's necessarily fair. However, I could see them probably being a shoo-in to get approved first, but I think there's already talk about a spot Ethereum ETF, and then from there would there be a spot XRP ETF, or once we get clarity for these coins, I think that will open up the market to the institutional market to say, okay, hey, there's money here, and we do it the right way, and we model it on this spot Bitcoin ETF that's gotten approved. Then I think that's inevitable. It's encouraging though that so many, at least in my opinion, that so many institutions are now getting in on the space. I think it gives it, it really backs up the fact that crypto is here to stay, and they are actually seeing the value in it now. It's not just BlackRock. Obviously, there's 5 other big institutions. There's VanEck, there's Invesco, there's WisdomTree, who are all kind of vying to be the first one. But I was talking to Grayscale the other day, and they had filed a letter, comment letter with the SEC. Obviously, they're still in litigation with them over this spot ETF getting approved. They filed a comment letter basically saying, we appreciate that there's so much interest in this space now, but we believe that everything should get approved at the same time. There shouldn't just be one over the other or one first, and just to keep markets fair and orderly, right? That was their argument, like keep markets fair and orderly. And I have to agree with that. So it'll be interesting to see, when and how, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy for sure. I mean, and the fact that I'm sure you saw this, like Larry Fink, who heads up BlackRock, like completely changed his tune recently about Bitcoin in particular. And a lot of people think it's only a matter of time until he changes his tune about XRP, about Ethereum, about some of the other major players. And then Novogratz. Yeah,
broke that on our. He broke that on Fox Business Air. Actually, he was on.
Right. Yeah.
Liz Clayman and Charlie Gasparino, and he said, Bitcoin is an international asset, and the crypto world blew up.
Yeah, 100%. And for good reason too. I mean, it's like finally. I feel like everybody's like sitting there, like finally, somebody as big as Larry Fink with as much power and impact and influence sees the benefit here of crypto and Bitcoin in particular in that case. But yeah, Novogratz also, talked about it here, speaking to what Fink said. And he said, he sees signs of increased institutional investor participation in Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and crypto markets following last year's crash. So do you think, like, looking back to last year, because I know you were covering some of those stories too, like, the Terra stuff, the FTX, do you think it was like, how do I say this? Do you think it was like necessary? Do you think it was kind of good for crypto to kind of get that stuff out of there? And they're like, okay, there's the ugly side. Now we have a path forward.
Yes, 100%. I think that was sort of the diseased part of the industry that we had to sort of weed out and say, okay, there are bad actors. There will be bad actors in any space. And I think that's something that the lawmakers are kind of catching on to, right? It's like, well, there's bad actors in, like you can launder money with cash, you can launder money with, through the banks basically. But, crypto isn't just this, vehicle for money laundering and for bad actors to circumvent the government, right? And I think as you're seeing such a change in tune now, and I think just with this pour in from institutional, the support, institutional investments, people are getting more confident and thinking, okay, this space, this industry that for so long was downtrodden and kind of bad mouthed, actually has some merits. It's got use cases. It's got it's a way for everyday people to kind of invest. And I think that this ETF drama, I guess the ETF saga has really kind of put that in the spotlight for sure.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. It's I think it's the start of a shift toward like, okay, let's get a path forward and see the good side. I totally agree with you too. Like, I think one of the craziest arguments is like, oh, it's only used for money laundering. It's like, how much more money is laundered with cash than crypto? Right. Like a lot.
And then you've got the Sam Bankman-Frieds of the world, right? You've got the Do Kwons, who frankly were definitely weeding out those people and kind of resetting the playing field a little bit. Definitely benefited the industry. To your earlier question, I think will there be more bad actors? Probably, but at least now there's sort of some support and there's more confidence that we have sort of gone back to zero, as it were.
Kind of a more like macro question for you. So that this whole debate versus like centralization versus decentralization, the idea of like the exchanges, there's a lot of regulatory issues or concerns or comments made about that. Like, where do you see the industry going in that direction? Like with the Coinbases of the world and the Krakens, the exchanges in the US that have done business for a really long time. It feels like things are shifting there. What's your take there? Yeah,
I mean, I don't think those exchanges are going away. I think right now DeFi is not even in the minds of lawmakers, and it's frankly, it's difficult to understand on the best of days, right? Like you've got, at least with the exchanges, like there's a centralized exchange and they're offering X, Y, and Z to these people, to institutional investors, to retail investors. But I think it's. Could you just ask that question again? Sorry, I want to change my answer.
No, yeah. So basically, it's just it feels like there's a big shift from centralized exchanges to DeFi. And
That's
I think even more people that are in crypto now, even with the whole FTX stuff, right? Like it's kind of scared people away from centralized exchanges a little bit. And I feel like people are taking that whole like not your keys, not your crypto phrase a lot more seriously now. But to your point, I don't know if the government even really is looking at DeFi as much as they're
going. So like obviously the exchanges, I don't think they're going away, but there's nothing in this sort of bill that kind of, I mean, they try and come up with terms that apply to, aspects of DeFi. And I think that was a big worry with this bill, that it would kind of quash DeFi, right? But I think it is such sort of a, this like crazy thing to think that like, oh, we could have this exchange operating completely without any humans and just run by a community. I think a lot of people in government, that's just, too far ahead in the future for them to even kind of wrap their heads around. But I think that's probably the best way to go in the future. I think like there's a lot to be said for DeFi, and that really is sort of the entire point of crypto in the first place, right? The whole industry is built on, this decentralization notion, where, you're not relying on one or two people to run the community or to trade. And I think it will get there. I don't think these exchanges are going away. They'll definitely be part of the conversation going forward. But with DeFi, I think it's just going to have to, like AI, it's sort of in its like early stages, I guess, and at least in the eyes of the government. And I think, it'll be a few years until there's sort of any kind of distinction there and any kind of attention that's, really, really brought to it at least from a congressional standpoint, right? Having any laws written about it.
Yeah. You brought up AI. I got to ask you about it now too. So like, there's a lot of like talk with AI and blockchain integrating. Like earlier this year, we saw AI tokens and cryptocurrencies explode, and it's a lot of it's hype right now. A lot of it's kind of like similar like metaverse, and it's like there's something here. We just don't know exactly what it's going to look like.
Right.
What's your take on that? I know it's kind of a more macro question, not XRP in particular, but what's your take? I mean, just with both those emerging technologies kind of taking over, blockchain and AI.
I think AI it's going to be big. Obviously, it's all anybody's really talking about right now. But I do think that blockchain and AI do sort of go hand in hand. So it's interesting that there's a conversation right now, and at least in the SEC, we heard Gary Gensler say the other day that he thinks AI is as transformative as the mass production of cars and the creation of the internet, right? So like you've got these regulators who are thinking in terms of this AI that they eventually want to regulate it, but he was so opposed to blockchain and cryptocurrency. But I do see those two sort of going hand in hand in the future. I mean, it's in its early stages, right? I mean, crypto's been around since Bitcoin's been around since like 2009. AI, we're really just starting kind of on the edge of everything right now. We've got ChatGPT obviously in its early stages. But I think, it's going to explode eventually, and how that's going to be regulated, I have absolutely no idea. It's actually a little bit scary. Like you think about, the possibilities down the line of, AI taking people's jobs. I say it from like a journalism standpoint. Google's coming up with this sort of pilot program that would establish AI as a news writer, right? So it would write articles, and I think it's tough enough in this environment to kind of weed out fake news and to figure out what's true and what's not. And just imagine like 10 years down the line when AI is super smart and they've learned everything, and it's kind of a scary thought. But I think it's going to be a big part of the future for sure.
I feel you there. AI is coming for my job too on YouTube, because they can do more videos. They can say the better words, everything. I mean, it's crazy, but I think we'll find a way to coexist, right? I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. But taking this back to XRP, so we got about 10 minutes left. By the way, if anybody wants to ask questions, drop those in. I'd be happy to bring those up. So if I had to ask you, fast forward 2025, August 11th, 2025, how is this all going to play out with Ripple and XRP?
August 2025. So
2 years from now.
2 years from now. Well, I think obviously the trial will be over. The trial between SEC is has brought against Brad and Chris, saying they aided and abetted the possible sales of securities with XRP. That'll be over. I think we'll still be we still be in the appeals process at that point. Whether they go ahead with this early appeal or they wait until after the trial, I think they'll still be in that process. I don't see it ending, and as I know the trial is in 2024, or set for 2024, but there's so many factors that are going into this now. And, you talk about Second Court of Appeals, that whole process. You talk about possibly going to the Supreme Court. This is not a short process by any means. So I think August 2025, probably if there's going to be an appeal, probably still in that process. I think there'll be more clarity. I think there'll be more cases, possibly the Coinbase case and the Binance case will have, obviously that'll be, further forward. There might be some outcome there that will have contributed to the conversation. Other judges might have different opinions. I think there's definitely going to be more clarity, which is obviously a really good thing. But with the Ripple case, I feel like it could still be going on in 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised, to see it stretch out that long. I mean, it's already been 3 years since they brought the case, right? So, unfortunately, these things don't just happen overnight. But
Sure.
With any luck, there'll be some clarity, and the space will be much further forward than it is right now.
What's your take? You just made me think of another question. What's your take on the whole Coinbase Binance situation and the lawsuits there?
Well, I think with Coinbase, right, like people are saying the Judge Torres decision kind of blows that whole thing out the window, right? It doesn't necessarily. It does for what they're alleging that they sold unregistered securities. It doesn't in the sense that they have said that they didn't come in and register as an exchange. So they, that's kind of a separate issue. And I think, depending on how everything goes with the bill and, of the bill that's going through the House right now and how these laws are kind of established, they might have them on that, right? Like you didn't come in and register as an exchange. So I think that, people say, oh, the SEC doesn't have a leg to stand on now because of the Torres decision. I don't think that's necessarily true with Coinbase anyway. And, with Binance, that's a whole separate thing. Obviously, people say that there's possibly a DOJ investigation. There's possible charges coming down the line for Binance and for CZ. We'll have to wait and see. But, at this point, it's just the SEC kind of like throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, I think. And, they're going to win some, they're going to lose some. But, it's obviously really in early stages of this Coinbase case. But they're going to use that Torres decision to say, well, we don't sell unregistered securities. We don't believe that these are unregistered securities. And just because the SEC says it is, doesn't mean it is. But it'll be super interesting to see how that, registering as an exchange plays out in the court.
Do you think we should have like another governing body formed that like works with the SEC and CFTC? Do you think it'll ever happen?
So one cool thing about the bill that I was digging into it when it first came out was they've got an industry group. Like, so, this bill passes, then the CFTC and the SEC has a meeting with, a couple times a year with this group of industry professionals, who deal in crypto all the time. And they have to sort of make suggestions. And it's kind of this sort of crypto council, right? So they will be having these conversations. And I think that's really important. Whether there'll be a separate agency, I highly doubt it. I think they will, work together, with both agencies to kind of establish that conversation and make sure that, everyone's being heard. I think, it would be useful to have a separate agency, but then at the end of the day, what are we going to have a separate agency for AI? Once you establish that sort of precedent, we have to have an entirely new group of people to oversee this. I think probably that's a bit of a stretch, but that was an important part of the bill, I thought, is that there actually is going to be conversation with industry, and it's not just these sort of government heads who aren't involved every single day like these industry people are, and there's going to be that conversation established. So that can only be a positive thing, I think.
That's a good point. Yeah. So Emacs got a question here. Does she see the SEC chairman Gensler stepping down or taking a back seat, since a lot of people are calling for that to happen? I think that's something that's coming out of the XRP community for sure, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he doesn't think he's done anything wrong. I think, we saw, obviously, it was on his schedule. He had these meetings with Sam Bankman-Fried, who is now, the poster child for everything crypto should not be. Yeah. He applied for an advisor role at Binance. He taught a blockchain course at MIT. So, right. Clearly there's conflicts of interest here. But, he's adamant in saying, I know my bounds. Like I know my boundaries. Like I know I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not going to recuse myself from any of these crypto cases. And I think he's headstrong in that. I think he's really making his mark now as the guy who tried to regulate crypto, the guy who tried to put a chokehold on crypto. And I don't think he's going to give up that sort of stance easily. And people say, oh, he'll change his mind, because he changed his mind early on when he said there needs to be crypto regulation, and now he's saying, oh, actually no, like we've got all the regulation, all the laws we need to regulate crypto. So he has changed his mind in the past. However, no, I don't see him stepping down. I think he's made his mark, and he's going to continue to do so until we do get a new SEC chair.
Yeah, a lot of people too have just said, it's kind of whoever's in power at that time, which direction he goes. Which there could be some truth to that too. Boca, what's up, Boca? Big XRP holder there. We need our Congress to do its job. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. It's comforting though that they did push this thing through relatively quickly, right? I mean, they introduced that discussion draft in June, and then they brought the markup pretty much the week after the new bill was revised, and now they're waiting on I think a vote it's not scheduled yet, but I think they want to at least do it by the end of this year, hopefully the fall, but it could be a little bit later. So they're hopping on it. It's just, I mean, I think these things take time, obviously, right? And there's so much. It's such a polarizing topic. There's so much split between the Republicans and the Democrats. So it's something that needs to kind of be more solidified. That more Democrats need to come on board for it to be pushed forward. But yes, I mean, yes, they do need to do their job. And
do you think that will happen?
Do I think what the Democrats will come on board?
Yeah,
I think is more. Yeah, I think is more comes out on the judiciary side. I mean, I think the Ripple decision was massively helpful in helping this bill pass committee, because you had 6 Democrats, I believe, sign on to the crypto market structure bill, and that was a lot more than what experts were originally expecting. And just as they see this outside forces, they see the judge's decision, they see BlackRock coming in, right, on all these institutions coming in and saying, all right, we want a piece of the pie, we want to get into crypto. I think more and more that will have an effect. But also they want to keep their seats, right? Like people vote for them. People vote for them to be there. So if crypto is something that their constituents want, then they're going to have to, find a way to make that work.
100%. Sorry, I was taking a sip of drink. Yeah, so we got about a minute or two left. Eleanor, this has been awesome. I definitely want to do it again. Any kind of thing? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying I'd love to anytime.
Yeah, so I usually end the interview or conversation like this. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about or say that I didn't ask, that didn't come up? Is there something that's still on your mind?
I would just say, I mean, I always kind of end my interviews with just like what we're looking at and kind of like what to expect in the next week or so. Obviously, the interlocutory letter from the SEC saying we're going to appeal. Now Ripple has the chance to respond. And we saw Stu Alderati come out on Twitter a couple of days ago saying, stay tuned for our response. So that's definitely something to watch. That should come out sometime next week. And then the vote on the bill going through the House, when that's going to be scheduled, I keep reaching out to my sources. I'm like, is there any news? Is there any scheduled date? And they're like, no, stay tuned. But my sources are telling me that the fall is the most likely time. So, we're already in August, which is pretty crazy. Summer's mostly over. And yeah, so I'd say those are like the two sort of big things. And yeah, obviously the pretrial schedule as well. We've got a trial possibly in the second quarter of 2024. Both sides have to kind of agree to that schedule and make sure they can facilitate those dates and everything. But it's moving along as quickly as it can, as quickly as these things do move along.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, let's do it again. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening and watching here this morning. It's been awesome. Let's definitely do it again, and especially when we get some more updates and things like that. Anytime we have anything breaking, we could do another one of these. So it's been fun. Thanks again.
That'd be great, Zach. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
See you, everybody.